Okay. Readings take two. All of my Scorpios and Sagittarians. Let me get one thing done today. If I get anything done, it's this. But I have so much more to do. Okay. Let's move on to Regina. Nothing, no planets in Scorpio this week. Lots of interesting changes coming up this year. I should check the intro of the video. It's actually the intro of the first video because this is going to be released into separate videos. So maybe bump over to that video to hear about some of the interesting changes that are going on so far this year. Not a lot in Scorpio, though, I have to say. Other signs are affected more. I'm going to disappear for a second so I can let this cat out. And oh, I didn't actually completely disappear. There we go. Okay, yeah. And there's my butt. All right, here we go. So yeah, most of the changes are not necessarily happening in Scorpio, although due to what I've looked into so far, and I'm not 100% sure about the last Mercury retrograde yet. Actually, I could probably I'm afraid to look because then I'm gonna lose my thing. But anyways, I'm not 100% sure, but I've seen that the first Mercury retrograde starts in Aries and ends in Pisces. The second one is pretty much full Leo. So the last one could go either way. It could be a full Sagittarius retrograde, or there could be an element of Scorpio involved there as well, because we had the retrogrades in full fire signs last year. So we're starting to gravitate towards water, more emotional Mercury retrogrades, if that makes sense. But we're talking the end of the year, not something that we really have to deal with right now. Other than that, focus is on your day-to-day schedule and getting stuff done. Juno continues to influence things a bit. So does Vespa. There's a couple of different ways that we can go with this. Juno, of course, we're talking about relationships being a really big part of your day-to-day activities. Especially with Juno not being retrograde, it is direct, so it's almost like it's in your face instead of we can kind of put that on the back burner for right now, I'm afraid. Vespa chasing that security again, and with it focused on your day-to-day schedule. It's actually kind of interesting because it's really all about focusing on you providing things to promote your own security, and that it's really important that oh, I'm so sorry, it's really important that you definitely focus some time in your day-to-day schedule on that. The more time you focus on building that, the less time you waste on how it should be, if that makes sense. Which we all go back and forth on that. It's not a you thing necessarily. It's a me thing. I think it's an everybody thing, and I also think that the downside to that is that when we realize that we're doing it, all of a sudden we just start beating ourselves up or kicking our own asses or whatever for allowing it to happen, which, I mean, what does that do? It doesn't it doesn't do anything, right? If we were kicking ourselves in gear, that's different. That's one thing. But usually that's not what we're doing. Usually we're just sort of doing it in a way that's sort of proving that we're not worth anything and we don't deserve anything, and it's that old trauma that's running the show here, not you necessarily, if that makes sense. And that's definitely something that we all should be aware of. Because self-sabotage is a thing, and a lot of times providing security for yourself is something that we deny ourselves while we are self-sabotaging. So it's a new way of looking at it, if that makes sense. And I think that chasing security, the older I get, the more I realize that chasing security is kind of a lost cause, because there is no such thing as security. I mean, for instance, if you own a house and you own some land, that's great. But if you don't pay your taxes, then it gets taken away. So do you really own it? When you think about it, do you really own it? I don't think that we really do own anything. I don't really think, I think that there's, I know that there's people who've worked their whole lives. I actually know a couple of guys who work for United Airlines, and it's union, and they had pensions, and they did all the right things, and then the airline went bankrupt, and when the airline went bankrupt, they lost their pensions, which I don't think is legal, and I don't think should have happened. It's my understanding that the union is a completely different entity than the airline. That being said, don't think it was that kind of a union. So here they did the right thing to provide security for their retirement, and now they don't have one. So I think with that being said, no, it's not all doom and gloom, but I also think that in some cases, chasing that security is kind of a lost cause, because we're never going to find ourselves in a situation where we feel absolutely secure every single minute of every single day for the rest of our lives. I think that's a pipe dream. What we can provide for ourselves, though, is maintaining a daily focus on what makes me secure in this moment, in order to counterbalance all the stress and the chaos and the people screaming at you and haggling over prices, and not seeing eye to eye with your husband, and all the other ridiculousness that goes on in the world, because we can't get away from that either. No matter how hard we try. I know why introverts are introverts. I mean, I do, it's because they don't want to deal with people and their crap. And I totally get that. Unfortunately, that also creates its own chaos and its own problems. Knight of Wands in reverse is the card that I just pulled for you, which I want to say is interesting, but I don't know why. Delays, need for patience, possible aggression coming up. I always get frustrated when there's delays. I definitely get frustrated and aggressive when people tell me to be patient. Of course, I get aggressive when anybody tells me to do anything. So, there you go. That's a thing. Frustration happens. It really doesn't get you anywhere unless, and this is definitely something that spoke to me. I saw this thing on Facebook. I don't know if I shared it or not. It was a while back. I think my girlfriend shared it, and it said, the only person that's going to save me is a version of myself that's sick and tired of putting up with my own shit. And that was like really loud, like they had got a bullhorn to say it, and that's true. And I think that when aggression shows itself in that capacity, then it's useful. If we're just constantly getting angry and stuck in this whirlpool of being angry, then it's not helpful. We're not able to move forward. We're not able to fix any situations. We're just stuck sort of chasing our own butts in some way. So, and I think that when we are frustrated and aggressive, or, overly frustrated and impatient, that just makes more delays happen. And we need to be open to the universe flowing in a way that's going to help us create rather than allowing these things to get in the way and slow us down, if that makes sense. So that's what I have for you this week. Moving on to Theresa, focus is on your day-to-day schedule this week. Juno continues to be in Scorpio, as well as Vespa. Juno is getting pretty close to leaving. Now, will he go retrograde and come back? Who knows? I'm not 100% sure at this time. But 26 degrees, he is getting pretty close to leaving. And of course, Juno is all about how we relate to others in terms of our relationships. And when that's focused on our day-to-day schedule, a lot of the times that means that relationships do take a prominent role in that day-to-day schedule, whether it is good, bad, or indifferent. I think we all would like to see the relationships where you feel warm and fuzzy and everything is great. And I think that as females, especially the mom/wife of the household, would really like to see that every now and then, because we really work very, very hard to cultivate that balance and that flow and the caretaking and all of it. We work really hard to create that, and a lot of times it definitely goes unnoticed and unappreciated, and that just kind of leads to Vespa's need for security and that constant sort of feeling daily that you have to provide that for yourself if no one else can provide it for you, which is a frustration. And in all honesty, both of these things, the security and the relationships, can really get in the way of you being productive, especially if you're trying to just look past them right now and focus on being productive. The problem with that is that they never go away, and they keep coming up, and they keep rearing their ugly heads, and they keep freaking calling all day long. Yes, I'm sorry. Some of my own frustration is getting in there just a little bit. And I'm powerless to do anything about it. There's literally nothing that I can do about it. And I feel this frustration around you as well. I feel that overwhelming sense of I have to do everything. And it's making me crazy. And I don't know if I can do it, to be honest with you. I don't know if I can do it either. And when I first said I don't know if I can do that, I meant you. Security can be nothing more than taking 10 minutes out of your day to meditate and refocus. Security is providing something for yourself that makes you feel secure, even if it's, like I've said in the past, to me, security is, I kind of see Vespa as being at my grandma's house looking at the fire, just feeling content and secure that everything was going to be okay, right? Recreating that for myself, even though I'm not in my grandma's house and my bills aren't being paid by somebody else. In that 10 minutes in front of the fire, it's just me and the fire. And I'm not meditating necessarily as much as I'm just spending some quiet time with me, checking in with me, checking in to see how I'm doing. And I think that that's the best thing that you could do to provide security for yourself, is to check in on your needs. We can't expect other people to do it, because obviously that's not going to happen. We have to be the ones to do it. And we have to make time in our schedules to do that. Check in with Theresa. What does Theresa need right now? Don't ask what Theresa needs from other people, because you're asking for something that you're not going to get. What can Theresa provide for Theresa that will provide some of that security, even if it's just a little bit? Doesn't have to be all of it. And it doesn't necessarily have to be monetary either. You know, you travel a lot. If you're still doing the same job, you're traveling a lot. That provides a lot of insecurity right there because you're constantly moving around, living like a gypsy. You know, that's not an easy thing to do. But if you were to take some time, go sit outside if there's flowers and hopefully not much snow where you're at, you know, or someplace that's really comfortable, that's serene, that's calm, and give yourself that 15-minute check-in. What do I need? Do I need to eat? Do I need to eat something that's better than what I ate last time? Do I just need to clear my mind for a few minutes? Do I need a shower? Whatever it is, you know, take that time to check in on your securities to see what it is that you need to provide for yourself. I think that even if you do that just a little bit, I mean, I do it I do it at least 5 minutes a day, every day. I provide something that just makes me feel secure in that moment. It helps immensely. And not in a situation where I feel secure at all, not even close to it. But that 5 minutes a day makes a huge, huge difference. And I just pulled the high priestess for you, baby. The high priestess in this position tells me that you are on a roll. You're doing great. You're standing in your power. You know what you need to do. You're not messing around and overthinking it. You're just doing. And that's fantastic. And, but even though you are, and you know you're doing a fantastic job, and you know you're knocking it out of the park, those insecurities still come in. Did I do enough? Did I do it as good as I could have? Is there places that I can improve it? We tend to nitpick everything to sort of downplay the good job that we've done. And that doesn't help either. You're a powerful woman. That's what she's coming in to say. And you're doing a kick ass job. Keep up the good work. And don't beat yourself up over shit that's not in your control. That being said, that's what I have for you, my friend. Moving on to Jillian. There's no planets in Scorpio this week. Focus is on your day-to-day schedule with two influences still. Juno, which is the dwarf planet that represents how we relate to others. So it has a lot to do with relationships. So relationships become a big focus in your day-to-day schedule, as well as Vespa, which is all about security. Oh, excuse me. And providing said security, preferably to yourself. There's a couple of different things here. One, Juno is making it very clear that your relationships need focus daily. Relationships need to be worked on daily. You don't fall into a relationship, think you get to know each other after 2 to 5 years, and that everything just sort of runs smoothly after that, because that is very far from the truth. People change. Whether it's us that create the change or them that create the change or both, who knows? And the minute we think that the relationship is providing security for us, we find out the hard way that that's not always the case, and that's not necessarily the case. So relationships have to be nurtured on a daily basis, and security for yourself has to be provided by you, more so than looking for it in other people. This is a mistake, actually, that a lot of women tend to make because, you know, it's just been ingrained in our brains for centuries now that we need a man to take care of us. Otherwise we're just in trouble. So Basically, when we take ourselves out of that need for somebody else to provide that for us, it gives us a lot more power. It is a lot of work, yes, but I think it's, and trust me when I say it's taken me almost 50 years to learn this, it's easier to provide it for yourself than it is to look for it in others. Because we have control over what we provide for ourselves. We have zero control over what other people provide for us. That being said, it's really very important to put those practices into your day-to-day schedule. What are you doing to provide security for yourself? Whether it's financial security, physical security, where you live security, or just feeling secure for 10 minutes. I like a hot bath. That hot bath makes me feel real secure. There's nobody there. I'm nice and warm. I'm kind of floaty. I'm nice and relaxed. I feel that security. I know consciously that it's going to end as soon as I get out, but I enjoy it while I have it. It's the little things that make a huge difference in terms of what we're providing to ourselves. And relationships, we do have to check in with our relationships, not just with other people though, but our relationship with ourselves is really, really important. We have to nurture that relationship with ourselves, especially people who have spent a lot of time dealing with trauma in their lives. You've been feeling insecure for a really long time. And that sort of creates this individual that's constantly looking for somebody to provide what they're missing. And it's literally something that you will search for the rest of your life. No one is going to provide it for you. Please understand that I am speaking from experience. No one is going to provide it for you. You have to provide it for you. It's the most successful way of doing it. Because if not, you wind up like the hermit, upside down, reversed, which is you against the world. Everybody hates Jillian. That is a fucked up place to be in your head. You know it's a fucked up place to be in your head. You've been there before. I've been there before, so I understand completely where you're coming from there. It's like everywhere I turn, I'm having to fight with somebody. I'm tired of fighting with people. I am literally so exhausted from that. It's just not even funny. So one day I'm going to be smart and stop fighting with people. One day, and it has to be really soon. I just need to stop fighting with people and I need to start taking care of me because no one is going to do it for me. And that is something that if you see that now will be so much easier for you later. It doesn't have to be this way. We do have the power to change it if we choose to do so. So that's what I have for you, darling. Moving on to Amber, there is no planets in Scorpio. There's no planets in Scorpio this week. We do have a couple of minor influences with Juno and Vespa still in Scorpio, focusing on your day-to-day schedule. Juno is all about relationships and a reminder in some ways that relationships have to be nurtured daily. It's not something that you do for a few minutes and then it should be good for the rest of your life. It doesn't work like that. Relationships are hard. Getting along with other people is hard. I think when you love them, that makes it even harder, because you know, freak out. when they're not taking care of themselves, or they're doing things that are maybe destructive to themselves, or they're seeing that you're doing that to yourself but you don't see it, and so you're resistant. It can be very chaotic. And for individuals that have been raised in within a lot of trauma, and I think Scorpios in particular, because it's a very deep sign, you guys hold that stuff down to your very toes. um it can be very difficult, which is why Vespa, I think, is a very important influence in your day-to-day schedule as well, because Vespa is all about security and searching for security. And especially those that have had a lot of trauma in our lives, we tend to be constantly looking for somebody to provide that for us, because it was denied us as children when we should have had it, right? The issue is we'll never find that person. No matter how hard we look, no matter how much we hope, no matter how hard we work to get them to provide it for us, they're not going to do it. Especially if you're talking about a person who's incapable of providing that for themselves. And I think that that's a lesson that's a really harsh lesson that we all have to kind of learn. Um, because many of us have been thrown in that situation, in some cases numerous times. To me, Vespa is all about, especially Vespa in your day-to-day activities, is all about learning how to provide that for yourself in some way. Not in a vindictive, I'm going to do this to spite you way, because it doesn't really work very well. But more like I'm going to start small with little things that make me feel good, right? Preferably not things that are unhealthy for you, like turn into drugs and alcohol and stuff like that. That's more destructive than helpful. But 10 minutes of meditation a day, a hot bath to me is a lifesaver in the day. I feel very secure. I'm by myself. I'm nice and warm. I'm floating. Don't have really a lot of gravity to deal with. In that moment, it's just me. It's just me and my meditation and my relaxation, and it makes a huge difference in the kind of energy that I put into everything that I do afterwards. Sometimes a little too much of a difference, or I'm just so relaxed that I don't want to do anything, but it it is a lot more productive when I do something when I'm already relaxed and focused, versus when I'm trying to do everything at once and it's just not working, if that makes sense. So I really feel that this week that's what it's all about. It's about creating those small practices that help you feel that security, even moments of it. Because I think that as searching for that for life, I don't think there is such a thing as true security, like 100% security, especially in adulthood. I just don't think that it really exists. I mean, you do have people out there that make tons of money and they own their house and they can pay their bills, and that provides some security, but we don't know what's underneath that. We don't know the relationship issues they have, or the chaos that the inside of them is going through because of the trauma that they sustained when they're children. Just because they got past that long enough to become a pilot and make a ton of money doesn't necessarily mean that they feel secure. And a lot of times we look at these people and think, well, look, they have all that security, how come I don't? But we're not taking into consideration what's beneath that and what we don't see. The world upside down is the card that I pulled for you, which basically is, in a way, does indicate your world has turned upside down. And There's a million different times in life where our world is going to turn upside down. The more resilient and flexible we are, the easier it is. And being a Scorpio and a fixed sign, flexibility is not exactly our strong suit at all. Because fixed signs don't like to be flexible. They like to make a plan and stick to it and not deviate from that. They are who they are and don't want to change, regardless of whether it's a good idea or not, especially if somebody else is pushing us to make that change. So, with all of that being said, I kind of feel like what's really important here is I'm looking at what the book says here really quick. Failure to complete what has begun, disappointments, and superficial visions. Superficial visions, all that means is that you set out to do something, you're highly motivated in the beginning, life happens, things happen, and you don't follow through, right? How many times have we done that in our lives? Probably 10 million, gazillion, quadrillion, whatever, right? At some point, we have to look at ourselves and go, okay, rather than pointing the finger at our families and our trauma and this thing that happened in the past and that thing and blah, 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 we have to take accountability for our lives. We have to do whatever it takes to get what we want in life without the excuses, without the going backwards again. I have a client who, has a really hard time and a really messed up family, and she's an older lady, and it's really hard for her to let all that go. The older you get, the harder it is to let it go. It keeps getting in her way over and over and over again. Regardless of how she spins it and justifies it, it does not change that. And that's what we have to take into consideration from here on out. Do I want to stay stuck where I am, or do I want to be as far away from that as possible? That's the choices that we have to make in order to minimize the damage. So that's what I have for you. Moving on to Peg, no planets in Sagittarius except for tomorrow, Sunday, right at the beginning of the week. The moon is in Sagittarius just for one more day, in opposition with Jupiter, actually in a T-square with Jupiter and Saturn. Jupiter's focus is on self, while the moon's focus is on money, and Saturn's responsibility is focused on those that support you. And there's a couple of different ways actually that we can look at this. One, because it's money involving other people, there is that element of being very aware that if somebody's coming to you to borrow money, because they're your friend and have supported you in the past, if you don't have it, you don't have it. And if this person is trying to make you feel like it's your responsibility to take care of this, it's not your responsibility. Even if they have been supportive of you in the past, this doesn't necessarily mean that you're responsible to them, especially if this is a repeat offender, if that makes sense. But also there's an element of a situation where you're trying to make money and there are problems with that, which there always is. And I'm not saying there always is because you always have problems. I'm saying in general, there always is. And somebody else is coming in and being like, oh, well, it's because you're being irresponsible. And it's not necessarily that you're being irresponsible. You're just having difficulties or challenges. Either way, this puts a very negative emotional spin on everything. And through your anger and your hurt and all of the stuff that's going on under the surface of that, it sort of starts to deviate. Your focus starts to deviate away from what's important and get swept away with the feelings around this situation. Luckily, it's temporary. It's a day and then we move on. Focus continues to be on money, but not with everything seeming to be all on your shoulders, if that makes sense. It's just focus is on money. And we're moving into this focus is on your relationship with your money, which is an interesting way of looking at money situations. Really, having a good relationship with money is a thing. Most of us do not have a good relationship with money. We have inner child trauma around money, how we were raised. And it's true for whether you were raised poor and didn't have a lot of money versus being raised completely rich and being given whatever you want. It still creates an issue either way. Our relationship with money is determined by not just childhood trauma, but early adult situations as well. And it's actually really bizarre how it plays out. I didn't learn this until maybe about 10 years ago. And somebody did an inner child meditation around money, and my first thought was it makes no sense. When you're a child, money is really nothing to you. Maybe you get an allowance, maybe you don't, maybe you make a little bit of money, whatever, and you go and buy candy or whatever little kids want to spend their money on. I grew up in the 80s, so it was usually spent at Claire's on clothes or jewelry or whatever. What I didn't realize until I did the meditation with this person was that I was reminded that I started my first business when I was 13 years old. I had a babysitting business. I had several clients. I had a Sagittarian stepfather. Oddly enough, two Sagittarian parents, step parents, light years different from each other. And he even helped me get one of the clients that I had. But then I was so busy working that I was neglecting my chores. So he took my money away until I did a better job with that. And I was never going to do a better job with that. The man got away with hundreds of dollars from me. I went out and worked. He took it. I never saw it again. I never got to enjoy it. I never got to hardly even see it, really. It was just taken from me and spent on whatever his needs were, whatever he wanted. One of my clients got really mad about that. So she stopped paying me and started holding on to my money. So I did get some of it later because he would not stand up to her. He was abusive, so he was kind of a coward too. And because he refused to stand up to her and she would come pick me up to work for her, there was really nothing that he could do. So I did get some of that money. I had somebody help me with that, which was good. That unfortunately created two money beliefs for me. One, every time I made money, somebody was going to take it. And what is reality? You make money and give it away to your bills so that you have a house with all of the utilities on, right? The other thing was because I had the client that helped me and she stood up for me, and that was a great lesson. And she was very helpful in teaching me to stand up for myself. She also came in and saved me, which also created a mindset that if I get into trouble financially, it's okay. Somebody will come in and save me, which is not the reality most of the time. So we have to check in. I think that whole thing taught me that we have to check in with what kind of relationship we have with money. Are we responsible with it? Do we overspend it? Are we putting everything that we have into getting it? Or are we putting minimal into it because our trauma says that we don't really deserve it? When we check in and are brutally honest with ourselves, we're able to see how we are sabotaging or self-sabotaging ourselves monetarily. And that is a lesson that's worth all its weight in gold. The Hermit. The Hermit was upside down coming into this about 2 readings ago, and here he is. And to be honest with you, this is exactly what I'm talking about. The Hermit becomes a hermit for a reason. When he's upright, it's for his own exploration. It's for his own learning. It's for his own progress. It's for his own development in some way, shape, or form. And I feel that this is really necessary, not just to learn something new in terms of what you're doing to make money, but to really understand pay on a much deeper level. Because the deeper you go, the more tools you have to work with. And the more tools you have to work with, the more successful you become. So that's what I have for you, my friend. And finally, moving on to Mama Sherri, the moon starts off the week in Sagittarius for one more day in a pretty big challenge with Jupiter and Saturn. The moon's focus is on finances or money. Jupiter's focus is on self and retrograde. So that the growth aspect of things kind of sort of feels stifled in that way when Jupiter is retrograde. And Saturn's focus is on those that support you. And the ones that should be responsible for supporting you and who tend to fall short sometimes because they cannot be there to support you, which can be frustrating. But you're a very different person than most people that are on this list, in terms of growth. At the same time, you're no different than anybody else, you know. It's very easy to fall into that sort of disparity feeling of, I can't do this, or I'm not good at this, or, I didn't realize how much harder it was going to be to do this on my own, whatever it is that we tell ourselves in that negative way, if that makes sense. Now, this is a day's worth of drama here, because the moon is only there for one day and then it moves on. But focus does continue to be on money. And we're very, very quickly moving into focus being on our relationship to our money. And that's what we need to focus on more than anything, I think, is, do we have a healthy relationship with money? I know you're really good with money and that you put money towards what you need to put it towards. You're not going around spending money left and right. And I don't really see you as ever being a person like that. I mean, you have your moments, but you are very responsible with money. This doesn't necessarily mean that you have a good relationship with money. I think a lot of times our trauma in life kind of sort of makes us feel like we don't deserve to have money. We don't deserve to spend on ourselves. Being a woman in general, a wife and a mother, we sacrifice our money for everybody around us. Rather than giving ourselves, what we need. And that reminds me of a hilarious story with Daniel. I didn't even realize that I was doing that for years. Being a stay-at-home mom and just doing the work online and stuff like that, and having to go through the gluten issue where I had to be very picky and choosy about the makeup that I was using because some of it had gluten in it and stuff. I stopped wearing it for a really long time. And one day we were at Walmart and I saw something on an end cap, it was a foundation or something like that. Daniel was still kind of little by all rights. You know, he just knew it was makeup. He didn't know what it was for. And I stopped and I looked at it and I picked it up and I went to read the back of it because it had something to do with age defying, you know, not sticking into the wrinkles and stuff like that. And Daniel turned around and said, "No, Mom, put that down. You don't need that. You don't want that. And if you buy that, you're going to get addicted to it like all the other moms. It's not worth it. Just put it down." And it was hilarious. Okay. It was adorable and it was hilarious. But I also realized this is what I've taught my son. I've taught my son that I don't wear makeup because I don't want to be addicted to it like the other moms are. Not that I couldn't afford it, not that I had put that on the back burner to make sure they had food on the table, not that I had health issues with, certain makeups or anything like that. No. In his child's mind, I didn't wear it because I wasn't addicted to it yet. And if I started to, I was going to become addicted to it. It actually was a big eye opener for just how much self-care I was leaving out for myself, honestly. And that's also what I was teaching him, which was not the best lesson in the world. So, a good check in on your relationship with your money, always a good idea. Three of Cups in reverse. Three of Cups tends to be a celebration. In this position, it indicates overindulgence, frivolity, and promiscuity. Well, what are you up to? Now, I know you're not out there running around being promiscuous, um, but that's kind of, if you talk about the overindulgence and the frivolity, that's exactly what we're talking about here. You know that it's your money. And if you have a little extra, get something a little, that makes you happy. Don't feel bad about it. Why should you feel bad about it? Not only do you have an income, you do readings, you're making money. There's no reason at all why you should feel bad or talk yourself out of doing something for yourself, period. You don't even have anybody to answer to. There's no reason for you to do that. So that's what I have for you. That's what I have for everybody. I will see you guys next week, hopefully in one video and one video only. Until then, have a great week. Enjoy this last week of January because February is right around the corner.